difficult relationship with anybody that he considered to be a love of his life. And it all stemmed, I think, from his childhood. When he was 12, he tried to make a little bit of money teaching piano. But the main way, and this is debated quite a bit, because there's a lot of research on the other side that says how this happens, but he actually played in brothels to make money when he was a teenager. And whatever happened during the brothels, he was playing, they sometimes paid him in alcohol when he was like 13 years old. And obviously the prostitutes would come and like sit on his lap and etc. He was actually very much affected by this. And so in 1880, when he was a celebrated composer and whatnot, they had a party and he got raging drunk, and they asked him, there's this lady we might want to set you up with, like, what do you think of her? And he went off on this incredible tirade against her. And she was like, that person, and just started cursing. And this was in the middle of the party. And it immediately shut the party down. Everybody was shocked and disturbed, and they all left the party. And as he was being taken to his bed by his friend, he said to his friend, he's like, was I really that bad? And his friend said, yes you were. And he said, I just don't understand, because, I don't understand how people could not expect that when all my life, when I was a child, I was, basically thrown into the, brothels to play, and my relationship with women was severely affected by that. And so whatever happened, like some people say that he was abused when he was there. Some people say that he wasn't, and there's plenty of, he grew up in the middle class, and his piano teacher never heard of that, and so there's a lot of debate. But he was greatly affected by it, which is the most important thing. And so what we find is with Clara Schumann, he was always getting to a point where it would sort of explode, he would feel the feelings well up, and then he tried to tamp it down, as he didn't feel like true, there could be an idea of true connection with another woman, right? And so he was engaged several times, and he broke it off each time, very much the same way. He would write a letter, I don't know if it's the equivalent of like texting people nowadays or breaking up on text or whatnot, but he used to write a letter that said, I love you, I cannot be without you, but we can never be together. Which is, a very difficult thing to state. But, that time there's this famous story when he was also a famous composer, and he had a concert of his works, and they went to a pub, and a prostitute actually recognized him and said, Herr Brahms, why don't you just go to the piano and play us something? She was drunk, And obviously, that would be really insulting if you're in a pub and a drunk prostitute comes up and says, yo, go play me something at the piano. And his friends were going to actually intervene and say, just please, we just came from a concert of, society people and whatnot. And they were surprised, because he got up immediately, went to the piano, and for an hour played waltzes and street drinking songs or whatnot. And at the end of it, when he came back to the table, they said, why did you do that? And he's like, this was my childhood. They used to play this all the time. It actually, the time when I was playing at the piano, focusing on music, was a very important time for me, And so, it's that sort of that, what we find in Brahms often is that, there's always mixed emotions. There's never the purity of connection with Clara. There's always some angst behind it. There's always even the purity of purity of text and innocence, but there's always some angst behind it. The tragic overture that we're going to play was not just the tragic overture that was written, it was also the academic festival overture that was written at the same time. And he says, where one weeps, one is joyous, right? Where there's joy in one, the other one weeps. And the tragic overture is tumultuous, exactly in the same way that we've been playing some of the works. It's an amazing piece. And the academic festival overture is a drinking songs put together. I have to tell you, this is my favorite story, but Brahms was, there's this university that asked Brahms to write a piece for them, right? And of course he's just like, no, I'm not, I write what I want to write. And so after many years of getting him to try to write a piece, they said, we would like to offer you an honorary doctorate. And we just admire your contributions to art so much. And he says, okay, fine, that's fine. And then they said, we are so honored that you're going to come for your honorary doctorate. We look forward to the piece that you're going to compose in honor of that, event. And so what he ended up doing is, because it was the provost and the administration for the university, he basically strung together 4 drinking songs and shoved them together in the Academic Festival Overture. And they are all ridiculous because not only are they actually really famous, German drinking songs, but they're also like not in normal phrases, like you are actually drunk. Instead of 8-bar phrases, like dancers are always counting by eights, and we always have phrases that are 8 bars long, etc. He puts it like 9 bars often, so it throws off as if you were drunk the entire time. So that's the Academic Festival Overture that we're not going to be doing, but the Tragic Overture, there's always sort of this duality there. Now this comes around to eventually, finally, the Brahms Requiem. So, like I mentioned, when Robert Schumann died, he actually has a requiem himself, and Brahms was toying around with the idea of writing a requiem. But the first time he composed something was after Robert passed away. He stopped the efforts after a little while because he was trying to take care of Clara Schumann's kids and teaching and writing some other works. But when his mother passed away, as tragically as I mentioned, that he was just almost like hours away from seeing her live and having a last moment with her, that really spawned the rest of the Requiem. And that sort of duality of this hope versus the anxiousness is throughout the entire work. And so, let's invite Andrew to the stage. The very beginning of the Requiem starts off very much like the First Symphony, actually. And we'll just try to get very big work. Very important, heavy work. I don't know why I got this out just for this single note. But the opening of the Requiem starts off like this. It's almost like it's pensive. It's this absolutely gorgeous music, but it's all built on that pulsating F, right? And this song that we're going to sing, if I can find the right page for it on my... No, don't go to sleep! 9 seconds, 8 seconds. Okay, we'll wait here. Oh, of course, it's because it's not in the email. Okay, right. Actually has the same sort of pulsating F that happens for the entire first few bars. But the music on top of it is completely different. He loves it. We call that pedal tones. It's almost like if you're an organ and you play with your feet, you basically, the pedal tones, you can shove your foot on one note and just kind of keep it there while you give them a play. And there's an entire fugue actually that's in the Requiem that starts off. But do you want to talk a little bit about the text?
Yeah, the text is by a contemporary of Brahms named Almers. The piece is Feldeinsamkeit. It's in summer field. And the poet describes how he's laying in the tall green grass and how he describes he can hear the crickets buzzing all around him, and he's in such peace looking at the blue sky pass overhead and the blue or the white clouds passing overhead, that he feels almost as if he's been dead for some time, and that he's just exploring this this grand space above him. And I think Brahms really captures that mystic feeling behind the text. So,
Ich ruhe still im hohen grünen Gras und sende lange meinen Blick nach oben, nach von Grillen rings umschwirrt und Dunkelglas, von Himmelsbläue, wundersam umflogen, von Himmelsbläue, wundersam Die schönen weißen Wolken ziehen dahin durch tiefe Blau, die schöne, stille Träume, wie schöne, stille Träume. Mir ist, als ob ich längst gestorben bin. Und siehe, selig mit vertiefter Räume und siehe, selig mit durchreifter
Like my favorite part about the song is the voicing. You know, like Andrew was saying, as if he was in heavens, right? You start off from below, and it gets higher, right? And then Andrew's voice is in the middle register here, and the piano is on both sides of that. It's upper register and much lower than he is, and nothing competes. He occupies that middle range right here, and it becomes this gorgeous, gorgeous sort of voicing that happens. And then when it becomes richer, you know. there's a peacefulness about it. You have that sort of underlying pulse to it, and it just sort of becomes, very, very, even though it has this richness to it, there's sort of a settledness to it that's very, amazing. I find it to be very moving. Now, like I mentioned, that the first movement and the last movement of the Brahms Requiem are related in sentiment. The text, selig sind Leidtragende, blessed are those who bear tragedy, and selig sind die Toten, blessed are the dead, right? The music of that last movement is very much exactly the same way of this particular song. And so instead of music that's based off of this pulsing, you'll have music that starts to rise and lift. And so it's still that low F. It's that note over and over again. The bass is just sustaining. The basses, as basses often do, just play that one long note. But instead of that pensiveness, instead of that sort of anxiety, right, it's a completely uplifting sense. And it's very much the exact same way. The sopranos have this one note that just blossoms and becomes one of the most gorgeous movements. It's really, really amazing. There's just because this stuff is so interesting. There's this one Scottish piece that Brahms wrote that I want to play a little bit of, because it actually has very much the same sort of sentiment to it, where it has this repeated over and over again. This time a D, and this is the Edward ballad, the ballade. Which is a story about the heartbeat and anxiety. It's almost like the Telltale Heart of Edgar Allan Poe, right? This murderer, this person killed somebody else, and the police come, and so you can hear the heart beating because it doesn't want to get caught. But it's the same sort of pulsing. You can hear it even more. Chomp, 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 chomp. That sort of repetition is you find it often with Brahms. And like I just mentioned, the first symphony, it starts off with 41 hits of the timpani. You remember that because it's, he was 40 or 41 when he wrote it. And so you can hear the timpani go pom, 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 over and over again. And it creates this incredible tension along with sort of the static note, but built in with all this sort of angst, right? And it's an amazing, amazing first symphony. It has the two lines that are grating against each other, and they sort of, one goes up, one goes down, and they just kind of clash against each other. And it's an amazing start to a symphony. It's actually very, very anxiety-provoking as it is. Again, not the classical start to a symphony that we're used to. Beethoven's first symphony starts like this. It's just very, very, very clean, right? And then Brahms, this, this pulsating note is very, very, sort of rich and dark, right? Now, as we said, the progression is always that in tragedy there will be comfort, right? And in the second and sixth movements, that's exactly what the sentiment is. And the third and sixth also have sort of these transitions. They also have these huge fugues. But the fourth movement, the last thing we're going to talk about today, is this gorgeous, I don't want to get the piano score for this, but it's How Lovely Are the Dwelling Places. And it's this respite from sort of this constant not negativity, but sort of and it's this gorgeous piece. Melody. It's very unencumbered, and it's really at the pinnacle. Like I said, the 7 movements, where the 4th one is the keystone, and it's an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous work. It has you're gonna have to hear it next week when we have the full chorus, but it's an amazingly beautiful middle movement that is sort of the idyllic sweetness that we look for in Brahms. But the very end of it is one of my favorite things of all time. In fact, we're actually going to slow down quite a bit in the concert because we want to have this special moment to be even more drawn out. And so, let me see if I can play. I didn't actually. And the very last part, these. It's almost like Brahms, at least to me, is saying Gute Nacht, very good night, right? You know. Very peaceful, restful, and very, very unencumbered, right? And that's the music that leads us into the 5th movement that he wrote for his mother. So I just want to sing, before we do our last thing, I just want to sing maybe a tiny bit of the 5th movement, the very opening. Again, once we arrive at this place, this is the 5th movement that he wrote last in the Requiem, and as I mentioned, it's the one that he wrote in honor of his mother. And the text, you know, very much like, I will love you as a mother loves her child, right? chorale-like melody after that. You want to talk about the text that you just sang?
Sure. This is from the perspective of Jesus, I believe, speaking, telling the people, you currently have sadness, but wait, it's going to be okay. And essentially, I will bless you and give you gladness, and no one will ever take that away from you.
And so it's that comfort feeling. Once we see the how beautiful is Adoring Place, that idea that is going to be passed on. And it's absolutely gorgeous work. And, coming as a last movement, it's, it's a really, really gorgeous work that I think has a lot of depth to it. And so I think you're going to really enjoy it. You should come next week. The Friday performances are the best chance to get a good seat, unless you stand early. But Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I want to have one last piece that we do. It's almost like a mini duet that we sing. This is one of the most famous tunes of all time, even more than... It's even more famous than that one. But this is written by Brahms. You might not know that this is written by Brahms. But it just happens to be in the same key as the fourth movement of the Requiem. And so just in the same meter, in fact, as the Requiem. And so this idea, like we talked about, when I said, literally that.
Guten Abend, gute Nacht, von Rosen bedacht, mit Näglein besteckt, Schub unter Redeck, morgen früh, wenn Gott will, wirst du wieder geweckt. Morgen früh, wenn Gott will, wirst du wieder geweckt.
Guten Abend, gute Nacht, von Äuglein bewacht, die zeigen im Traum dir Christi Kleinsraum. Schlaf und selig und süß, schau im Brahms Paradies. Schlaf und selig und süß, schau im Brahms Paradies. Schlaf und selig und süß, schau im Brahms Paradies.
Schlaf nur selig und süß, schau im Trance
As I mentioned, we're very lucky to have Andrew and Ellen both here for this event, but even more lucky, obviously, to have them for the concerts that are next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And if you happen to be in town in Estonia, Sweden, and we're going to be taking them on tour with Latvia. We're going to take them on tour to Europe with BCCO's tour. I just wanted to mention that the entire last work that we just sang